Hello, Shane Evans.
Hey, Stephanie. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. Thank you for joining me. This has been a long time coming.
It has. I think, like you said a couple minutes ago, it's been back and forth for about a year. We've been trying to get this on the ringer. So
Yes,
thanks for
yes.
having patience with me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think there were things on both ends, but I think what makes this really a perfect time for us to get together now is because so much has happened in the last year, right? So I know you've touched on some of that in the network to net worth Zooms, and so which I absolutely love, and everybody should go to it. Uh,
Thank you.
Shameless plug there, yes.
Yeah. I didn't even have to
Um,
do it. That's nice. Thanks.
join us, yes. And so, what I thought would be cool is let's talk about that. I'd love to drill down on what has changed for you in the last year, and then maybe like dive deeper into that, like why the change, what have you seen since then, and those kind of things.
I love that. So I guess I'll start with just kind of where I started and kind of where I'm at now, and kind of make my way through that. So, about a year ago, I stopped working my W-2. It's been pretty amazing. So I think I left June 4th or something. I was a teacher, and I was able to step out of the teaching position and realizing that my skill set was about getting people excited and interested in doing things, and I didn't realize what that skill set was going to bring me until months and months and months and months later, when I'm finally like, oh, I'm kind of in my zone of genius. I like this. This is where I need to be. And so I basically started out with real estate. 2016, did some stuff with my wife. We have a multifamily in New Jersey that we used to live in. We sold. Well, we still have that. We moved up to Vermont. We live in Vermont now. So much nicer than New Jersey. Sorry, everyone in New Jersey. You should leave.
No offense. No.
No, total offense. I'm sorry.
No, Arkansas is the worst. Arkansas is the worst. Believe me. No.
I get to Route 17. I drive back to visit family. I get to Route 17. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, this is one highway that like is bisected by all the major interstates. And like I start white knuckling as soon as I see the sign because it's just people cutting you off left and right.
Whole different vibe, huh? Okay.
Yeah. So we moved up here. I started doing a little bit of real estate. I did some wholesaling. For me, that was not the way to go. It was a grind. It was too much. It was just over and over and over again, doing things failing, or, oh, hey, look, one thing hit, great, but it was lots of calls and it was demanding, but it taught me a lot about the industry, which was really nice.
Okay.
I then joined a coaching program in June of last year, and have totally and completely changed who I am as a person, to be honest, just by going through that coaching program. That's with the Growth Co. with Jesse Stanton. He's not paying me to say that, by the way.
Jesse's the man.
He's great. And so I went through his program, just totally changed the dialogue in my head about what I'm worthy of and what I'm capable of and what I have to do in order to get to the things I want to get to, right? You're not going to get to the things you want to be at if you don't do something new, if you just keep doing the same things. So
true. Yes.
Yeah. So totally changed who I was or who I am now. A lot more consistent, a lot more follow through, built up my basic brand, and the Mohawk helps a lot. It just happened to be there. It was a COVID joke by my wife when she gave me a haircut in the middle of COVID, but it stuck. So I laugh at her now.
She didn't know what she was doing.
And then I was like, I'm going to keep it. She's like, okay. Now she still gives me the haircut. It's great.
I love it.
Yeah. And so, I pivoted. I was doing wholesaling with a friend of mine. We were trying to buy, but then it turned into wholesaling because we didn't have the funding. And then, then you learn you need to get two things, right? You need deals and need money. So we prioritized money, and I prioritized my skill set. And I was looking to buy single families, smaller stuff. And now I've decided, knowing who I am as a person, I partner with other people doing some private money lending, some other things, and just, realizing that's not what I wanted. Right. So got into the mindset of, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do, if I buy a duplex or a 5 unit, it's not much different than buying a 500 unit. to be honest.
Mm.
You're just dealing in bigger numbers, and you still need to talk to people to get funding. You still need to talk to people to get deals. It's just a different level, like 10xing and you talk
Yes.
with Grant all the time.
Yes.
So that's what I've pivoted to. I found a partner who is kind of the yin to my yang, and she's fantastic, Marley Tarbo, and she's just phenomenal. She knows how to do all the numbers, and she knows how to do all the structure, and I know how to find the people and the things. So realizing our wheelhouse and what we're both good at, that's how I've changed what we're doing. So we're doing that, and we're also adding on business acquisitions as well as part of that side of things. So, running a multifamily is no different than running a business. What we've, I've identified after being told by Marley, essentially. And I'm working on that. I also run the network as well, and just building up my brand a little bit more and just continuing to move forward.
Man, so much good stuff there. So you said you totally changed as a person. Were you looking to do that, or did you kind of come to that?
Both.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like,
okay.
My entire life, I've always been like the 85 to 90% person where like, and right now I have a barn that's not finished being built. We live in Vermont on 5 acres. So like, I'm trying to build this barn, but I don't want to spend the time on it because I know that if I devote time to that, I take away from this. Now realizing who, not how. Let me get the money to pay for someone to finish the barn. Right. And so I've really learned through coaching, through therapy, through Brene Brown. If you don't know who Brene Brown is, she's my girl. She's a phenomenal author and researcher on like shame and shame resilience and all these different like mindset type things on specifically how we as humans see ourselves, right? Because we are our worst enemy by far.
For sure.
And so through all of that, through life things that's been going on in my life, and just realizing a lot of different, just being appreciative of things instead of, I'm not working a W-2 anymore. So no one's breathing down my neck in a sense that they're like, oh, you have to do this, this, and this. I'm like, I don't need to do that. Now I can do what I need to do. And so, I was looking for a change, but I never had really a roadmap, never kind of put the pieces in play to do that. And, until I learned about consistency and getting up early and going for exercises and like doing what needed to get done versus what was convenient, that is what has changed who I am.
It's like, okay, let's just have a heavy pause there to soak that in, right? What needs to be done. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. There can always be an excuse, right? I actually just did a webinar through my work because I still have my W-2, and it was talking about overcoming perfectionism. And one of the things, there's a couple of things that what we're talking about right now, what you're sharing, triggered something. So one is the perception of what is expected of you, or what you expect of yourself, or what you expect of others. I've always heard people talking about expectations, and in particularly expectations of others or of certain circumstances. And as a kid, I remember thinking, why do I keep getting disappointed? And when I really thought about it, I'm like, okay, it's because I expected XYZ and I got ABC instead. So you know what? I'm just not going to expect anything anymore. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, I'm not going to expect it anymore. And then if something good happens, I'll just be pleasantly surprised. And I remember telling my mom that. She's like, that's so dark. And I was like, no, I think it's realistic. Like, I don't want to keep getting disappointed. If I just stop expecting this, whatever, I want it to be a certain way. I want this person to be a certain way. I want this job to be a certain way. I want this house to be a certain way, or whatever the thing is. If I stop having those expectations, then I'm just going to be happy with what I get. And that's not a bad thing. That just means I'm going to have hopefully a happier life. I'm not going to be disappointed all the time. But what I heard today from this guy who's a psychologist, he's talking about overcoming perfectionism, which, oh my God, seriously, right here, I can't tell you how many years I've dealt with that. And I think I've been better over the last couple of years. But he said perception of expectations. And so now it's like, wow, okay. So I could be perceiving that somebody has expectations of me, and that's driving what I'm doing and how I'm performing and how I'm responding and all of the things when they don't even necessarily have that expectation.
Right.
Whoa.
Whoa is right. It's a really, I mean, if you think about it, right? And my wife and we don't have a debate about this often, but like it's a conversation, right? Because like when somebody comes over, my wife wants it to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why? Is it because you want to feel a certain way, or you don't want them to think of you a certain way, right? But you don't even know what they're thinking. If we go to their house, we don't know what their house looks like, and then there's we have been. I'm like, well, that's besides the point. But
what does it look like before you show up?
We dropped in. It's still, very similar. There's, lots of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I think, and going off what you said about the expectations, right? Perception of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Something I read or listened to recently talked specifically about that, where it's like if you're happy with what you have, right? And that's a hard thing to say, right? You're content.
Yes.
The status quo, right? Anything more than that is beneficial, right? Yeah. Anything more than that is like, oh, this is great, right? And then there's that other flip side is like, you still have to do the things you don't want to do though.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And, for me, I know that it's those tiny little things. We talked about it yesterday on the Zoom, and it's tiny little things that I remember when I was really, really into like in my change mode. Right now, I've kind of got a new reset point.
Yeah.
In the middle of all this change, my laziness of like throwing the laundry and the sock doesn't make it into the hamper and just leaving it there, versus now it's like, oh, I didn't journal, or that sock didn't make it in. So like I'm about to go down the steps and I'm like, oh, I have to turn around and go do it. And like I forced myself to do it. What was it going to take me? An extra 3 seconds to pick that sock back up or do it right?
Right.
Waiting until later. It's the little things, right? Loading the dishwasher and starting it at night gives us a fresh start in the kitchen, right?
Yes.
This is empty. Whatever it takes to get you to where you want to be. But it's not going to happen when you feel like you have to do everything right the first time, the right way, perfectly.
Right. Well, some people don't even start then, right? How many times have you thought of something that you wanted to do, but then there's the conversation that starts going through your head and you don't do anything, which is a choice because you don't want to fail. Whatever the expectation is that you think, you've already talked yourself out of it, or you're procrastinating, which was another thing that this doctor talked about in this webinar I went to. Procrastination is a part of the perfectionist mentality, because if I can't do it perfectly, then why do it at all? And then that makes me think of what Pace has said over and over and over again: fail forward. Right? So it's almost like saying that failing forward, which has helped me a lot in the last year, is giving yourself permission to not do it perfectly the first time.
Yeah.
Right? Which goes back to that perception and those expectations. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. I can take this step, and it doesn't have to be a big step. It can be a little step, but each step is going to build on the next step. Right. Yep. And you're going to get the flywheel moving, if you will, from good to great. Right. Each little step moves. It's almost imperceptible. But once it starts, now you've got the momentum, and all because you were willing to just go ahead and take that one uncomfortable action after another, not trying to be perfect, even expecting failure. Like I was talking to, Desiree, actually, one of her goals is to try to fail. She wants to try to and teach her kids it's okay to fail, because we heard, I think it was Vina that was she was talking about how she talks to her kids every day. What are 2 things that you failed at today?
Oh, I like that.
And it's taking the action. And did I fail? Great. Good. You took some action. That's awesome. And you failed. Yay. What did you learn? Right? Totally different way of looking at it. God, I wish I would have had that when I was growing up.
Well,
Right?
start now, right? That's the thing. Start now. You got to unprogram
Exactly.
so much.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, hey, as long as you learn it, it's never too late, right? And then you just, it's the habits. I think when talking about like health and fitness and all of that, I think they say it takes 90 days to create a habit or to break a habit. So, yeah. So it's possible. And maybe some people can do it sooner than others. But on average, it takes a while. It's not that instant gratification. It
That we
takes
all want,
time.
right?
God,
Well, and to kind of go off that, I remember, and maybe this is a new study or not, but I remember in high school, if you wanted to create a new habit from scratch, it's like 27 days.
okay.
But what you're saying is if you want to break an old habit and replace it, you have to do something totally different. It's going to take longer.
Yes.
But it's also those little, like you said, those little stacking, they call it stacking, right?
Yes.
Stacking your habits. It's like something you always do. Every time you do it, great. Add this piece to it, right? Every time you go to look in the cabinet in the fridge, oh, I'm going to do a push-up or 10 push-ups, whatever the heck it is. And then you learn like, oh, when I open the fridge, I got to do this thing. And it creates that habit instead of it being like, you also want to look at it as you get gratification from it. Like there's something that comes from it. You can't just have a habit that you're trying to create and there's no benefit from it.
Right.
You have to have, if you stack it with something that's positive, you can build those habits in a different way. Like for me, running in the morning, running sucks, right? Like it sucks, but when you get to that point where you're like, oh, I need it. Like, I don't want to run to the end of that. I've done that before. I've run, the 3 miles around my house loop, like 300 times this year. And yet I don't want to do it again. And I get to that point where I'm like, well, if I think about it, I do it, right? I add, if I'm today, I was running and I didn't run as far as normal because had a rough like weekend or whatever in terms of like bad eating habits, right? And decided to, as I ran back, I'm like, okay, I'll just get back to the house and then go to the driveway. And then I was like, oh, no, maybe I'll go to the end of the road. And then, well, maybe instead of running just to the end of the road, I'll loop around and I'll run halfway back up. And then, also you're adding and adding and adding, but there's also that other mindset of when do I stop? That's another piece.
Oh, yeah.
Setting a goal and sticking to that goal. So for me, I had to say, okay, my goal was to go to the bottom of the driveway or bottom of the road and walk backwards up, let's say. Because it's a neurological thing by walking backwards up a hill, your brain has to process how to do that. So it changes.
Good Lord, I'm sure I'd fall.
The amount of times I've fallen while running, oh my God. And like flat on my back, ice kind of falls. Like, those are the epiphany moments. Actually, I take those as signs, as like whatever I was thinking about at that moment. Take a note, and
let me write that down before I get up. No,
no joke. Middle of the road, 5 a.m, dark out, writing it down. But yeah, like adding those little habits, and for me, when I go for those runs, let's say, or I get that gratification of like, look, I can do that. I can do that one extra step, and that in your brain rewires the fact that you're capable and that you can do those.
Right. Yeah, you really are rewiring, right? So you're doing some uncomfortable things. What are you doing to build that consistency? Because I know I've struggled with that, and I've done all kinds of things, and some things work, some things haven't worked. I know a lot of people struggle with that. So what have you done to help
Oh boy. I mean, you're kind of preaching to, what I'm dealing with right this minute is consistency.
Ooh,
And that's a hard thing, especially when you're pivoting in your business a little bit. Because we're just adding on the business buying and we're just adding on a couple pieces of like having to do things. And the pivoting part is it adds a little bit of a dynamic of not sure what you're supposed to do. Right.
yeah.
So kind of like the perfection we were talking about.
Yes.
The consistency, you don't know what you need to be consistent about, but to be honest, it's really just about being consistent in something. And that's
Mm-hmm.
really, really important, like social media, let's say, right? Posting every
Yeah.
single day. I have not been on the top of that because I've been focusing on this other thing, which I've been consistent in that other thing, but this thing fell off, right? So you have to pick and choose. Like you can only manage so much, right? So one thing an analogy that I've really taken home is before you can pass something off, you have to
Yeah.
fill that cup to the brim and let it start overflowing. Then you can pass off that full cup to
Mm.
someone else, and then you start working on the overflow, so that you can go ahead and say, all right, here's the thing I need them to work on. I've quote unquote mastered it. Here's it for someone else. But like
Okay.
postings of social media, for instance, you're not going to go and hire someone right now and pay them
No.
$4,000 a month to post for you. It's not happening.
Right.
One,
Right.
you don't know what your
Yeah, it's
message.
not worth it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know what your branding is. You don't know what your message is per se. I mean, you do, but like you don't know exactly how to pitch it and how to do it. So you've got to try. You've got to fail. You've got to just let it happen. And same thing with these businesses and with buying properties. It's like, all right, let me talk to this seller. Oh, that seller was, not very forthcoming in the information. All right, well, let me talk to this broker. Oh, brokers, right? Like
Yeah. Right.
things, or agents or whatever, whoever's the gatekeeper. And the consistency, I would say, is really time blocking and really
Yeah.
figuring out what you're supposed to do every day, work from the end to the beginning. And that's something that I'm supposed to do every 3 months. And my brain just hates doing it, even though I know that the rest of my day feels amazing because
Yeah.
I have these big chunks of free time that I can schedule whatever. Days like this, it's like, oh, well, I have free here, I have free here, or maybe I can schedule a meeting there, or what am I going to do next? And just maybe I'll take a nap, right? So the brain wants to find a way out of it, and yet
Right.
I could spend 2 hours figuring out my time blocking, probably longer than that because I got to figure out my goals first, right?
Yeah.
And work backwards. But I'd say that's the biggest key thing. So as I pivot to the next thing, that's what I'll be working on.
Okay. So time blocking. Yes. I've done that. I think and it works for sure. I think what happens for me, and I have to believe I'm not the only one, is something pops up that just throws a wrench into the whole thing. It goes back to that whole man plans and God laughs, right? Because you can make your plans, you can block out your time for things, but things will come up. And for me, that is where I feel like I'm constant. It's like a constant battle. I've got my time blocking, and then something comes up that takes me away from that. And I think through, okay, is this there's that matrix, and I can't remember all of the things or who came up with it. I think I heard it from Marlon once, where it was, okay, is it important, is it urgent, and where does it fall into that quadrant, right? And I've talked to my team about that at work as well, right? Things come up. And so we have to consider then, okay, is it important and urgent? Is it important? Is it just urgent? And what qualifies as that? And then what do you do next? Well, what I've done next is, if it fits all of the criteria where I really have to address that now, that is the choice I have to make, then now I've got to adjust everything else. And that's hard. That's
very hard.
very hard.
I think one of the things that I do is part of my schedule is I actually have a chunk of time right now that says, let me look at it. It's for the afternoons because I try to do my meetings in the morning as much as I can. But
Yeah.
it's called cause problems and fuck shit up.
I
And,
gotta do that.
and essentially, it's like my free time, quote unquote.
Yeah.
It's a couple hours every day
Yeah.
that I need to put a schedule in, or I need to put a calendar in, or I need to do whatever I have to do at an event. That's where I fit it. It's like, and if I
Ooh.
need to shift things, I can shift them to that spot and then take over this spot.
So it's almost like you're building in some space for shit to go sideways.
Absolutely.
Ah,
Absolutely.
I don't think I've done that. I think I've just planned it all out because that's the perfectionist side of me, right? Where I'm just going to put everything in and it's pretty and color coded and then it goes sideways.
Yep.
And then it messes up my beautiful time blocking.
Yep.
So build in some space for things to go sideways.
Yeah.
Yes.
Building grace for yourself because it's not going to go perfect. You know that.
Yes.
So why, like you said, expectations, why live up to that expectation?
So true.
You know, that it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. Never will.
Right.
You know?
It's never going to be perfect. So just account for it.
Yeah. That's all.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So you've made changes. You're pivoting. How did you decide to get into the multifamilies because of who you met? Or because you did have a multifamily, you said, before you moved.
Yep.
So what made you go to these two things, to the big multifamilies and to buying the businesses?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the multifamily has always been on my radar, right? But it was always like, okay, 8 units, you know, or smaller. It was like, I can't do big ones because I can't operate that big. And so now that I've realized my skill set, it's not to operate, it's to bring the things to the table, bring the people to the table, bring the team together, find the people, find the things, and provide the value that way. So now, you know, the business buying is actually very new. And it's because when you look at a multifamily, it's like running a business. That's all it is, I said. And we were going down the route of co-living and military co-living as well.
Okay.
And it, you know, it was pad split or whatever other model might, like you use that, you know, that world.
Right.
And it just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't jive with the way we were trying to do things, right? Like what we want to provide is, you know, our mission is basically to provide, you know, low-income housing, sustainable housing communities that people can interact and can, like this multifamily we're looking at, and any one that we do, a certain percentage is going to be low income or Section 8. And then, and it's a percentage and not all of it because we want to be able to bring people in and integrate them versus just, okay, you're all here in this corner and all the other people are over here, right? Yes. And so that's the only way you can elevate people is by proximity, which we know, which are communities and that. And so the goal of what we're trying to do is it just didn't align with the co-living at the time. Okay. Yeah. So that's why we pivoted there. And then the business buying is because we're at a point where everything we're doing is like, we're waiting on the lenders to get us back our approvals. We're waiting on the private lenders to say yes or no, they want to do this thing. And then we're waiting on the sellers to give us the thumbs up that they want us to buy the deal. And then as soon as that happens, I mean, it's game on. Yeah. But there's 3 different things we have to deal with and we're waiting on. So it's like, we can twiddle our thumbs for another 2 months, or we can go ahead and pivot and start doing this, go this route, find the people that we want to operate this and just move forward on something and get momentum that way, because a business is going to bring in to us a larger return on investment or a larger cash flow immediately than a multifamily that I still got to get tenants on, that I guess, or smaller. Yes. So that's kind of why we added that. And my partner, her background is in mergers and acquisitions. That's her jam. Worked for a property tech company, just phenomenal at what she does. And it's like, okay, like let's use your skill set, put it to work. Let's use my skill set, put it to work, and let's do something. Like,
right.
That's where we're at.
I love it. Okay. So what, and we've touched on this. What are some things that you're noticing now, a year later, the person you are now versus when you first started?
This is a tricky one, right? Because that's touching a lot of like perfectionism guilt right now as well. Right?
No, looking back and seeing the progress.
No,
right?
I know, but like I'm still not where I thought I should be.
Oh,
right? It's always that perception.
Yes.
And and if I'm vulnerable with myself and with you, the things that I have seen that have changed the most is, and the things that I have trouble with is my relationships with people. Not trouble in the sense that like I'm not good with that. I'm really good at starting.
Yeah.
Maintaining is not the strongest suit of mine. Like,
good Lord, now you're preaching to the choir for me.
It feels like I'm bothering someone, or if I follow up, and like even if it's just friendship, like, oh, they're too busy, right? And that's an internal perception. Like, I'm busy as all hell, but also like I feel bad asking people for advice or help or whatever, even though that's why they want to be part of my life. Like, they want to be giving me the advice, and I feel like I'm not good enough to bring my issues to them to ask for advice. Right. And yet I can have meetings with people and preach it all day long and help them, tell them exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Yet it's like, we all know it's hard to follow your own advice. It's just so difficult. And I just, I definitely feel that, I think that's the biggest thing for me, is identifying and knowing like that I am not a distraction to others. I'm not like, I'm worthy of my time and other people's time.
Yes.
That's the biggest one. And also going out of my way to help other people and being, okay, this is the biggest one. The biggest realization and change that I've had is being responsible for more than my nuclear family. And even my nuclear family, right? Like, just doing the laundry in the morning or at night, or putting it away, or whatever it is, like those little itty bitty things.
Oh yeah. That
help someone in your life. And then also wanting to be not in charge of, but feeling responsible for others in a way that, like, I run my weekly Zoom.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like people don't, like, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, no one must be there. And then I go last night and there's 20 people there, and I barely even marketed it. Right. And my brain is like, really? Like, okay. They want to,
why do they keep showing up?
They're here because I must be connecting in a certain way that gives them value. And you've got to remember that you're valuable. And that's a really, really hard thing for a lot of us, I think.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah, I think that's a very good point, because as newbies, right, everybody says the same thing. We've all said the same thing. Well, how can I help anybody else when I don't know anything? Well, it's like, no, you do know stuff. Maybe you don't know the thing that you're learning now, but you do know other things. There are ways that you can add value. And I think that goes to the deepest, everybody's deepest desire is to be able to feel valuable to others, right? We're community-based people, right? We seek relationships with others, and some are better at that than others. You can start out great, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, am I going to bother that person? Or you get lost in checking off all the things on that calendar and you didn't build in that time to reconnect with people, right? And stay connected. I've done that. It's such a challenge, but at the end of the day, it is about making that connection and responsibility, ownership, right? I think taking ownership of how can I help somebody else today? And that was something that I really liked about what Jesse put out there at the very beginning of this, a year ago, where he said, don't just ask, what do you have? What do you need? But what is it that you need right now to get you to that next level? When he asked me that, I responded to that very differently than what do you need? Because what do you need is very broad.
Yes.
Right? Very, very broad. But now I'm going to get very specific, because what is it that I need to get to the next level implies that I have a goal or a destination that I am heading to. And now I'm focused on that rather than, well, I need money and I need deals.
Yeah.
You know,
So true.
like, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I have found that to be one of the biggest things that has transformed me, is now I'm in a place with like-minded individuals where I can add value to them in some way. Right. And so now I'm going out of my way almost to look for ways to help people, big or small. And, sometimes it's just answering a Facebook post where somebody has a question, right? But that helps them. And that could help somebody else looking for that same exact thing. So it doesn't even have to be something big or time consuming, and where you can add value and help somebody else out.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I love that mindset too, because it's especially important to, and this is one thing that I know I do well. I've had lots of feedback on it, is I give people the space to be vulnerable and share what they need. And I've had people who are, quote unquote high level, right, that are wouldn't talk about this to anyone else, and they're telling me like all their issues, and it's like, oh, I'm coming to you for advice, let's say, and you're telling me the things that are going wrong. Like, what just happened, right? Like, I'm the sounding board.
That's magic right there.
It is. And it's also an interesting place to be, because you understand that person a lot better, and especially if you put yourself in their shoes, which is something that out of necessity I was able to do. Like growing up, we all have these skills, these superpowers that you have comes from your biggest, this is what I've learned. Your superpowers come from your biggest protections in your life, right? Like you have to protect yourself as a 2-year-old. So my little Shane had to put up, pretend that everything was okay and make everyone else laugh, or make them feel good, and try to understand them, because it was, let's say it was so volatile, I didn't understand why someone was going to explode, right? Or get angry or whatever it was. So I built up that skill, which is now, it gives me anxiety still talking about it, right? Because I think back to what it was, and thank you, skill set, for being there with me, but I don't need you in these different methods anymore. I need you I can now take this version of me and say, let's put that to work. Let's help people.
Right.
Let's find, use that superpower to help. And that really changes, like you talked about, rewiring your brain, changes the way that you're able to help people in places you didn't think you could, right?
Right. Exactly. So, playing to your strengths, right? Gallup's Strength Finder 2.0. I learned about that book, 7 years ago now. And my number one strength was relator. And I looked at it like 3 times, because I was like, what? Wait a minute. How? What is that? Like, I don't is that a strength? How's that a strength? I don't get it. And I couldn't believe it. I kept looking at everything, and I thought, okay, you know what? This is really cool. I am going to do this. I am going to play to my strength.
Absolutely.
I didn't know it was a strength, but I'm going to play to it now. Yes. Play to your strengths. And, that I think you hit on something that I've shared with people over the years as well. You think about where you come from, and one of the things that I heard on the radio by somebody, they said, the only happy people I know are the people I don't know well, right? Everybody has has had some kind of struggle. There is no such thing as somebody having a perfect life, right? And the thing is that when I look back on my life, I would not change anything because of who I am right this moment. I am pretty proud of who I am and what I've accomplished and what I'm going to accomplish. And I had to go through all of those things in order to get to this point, right? It's almost like I heard somebody say diamonds are not just made by themselves, right? They're made from continuous pressure. The pressure and the struggle is the whole thing. That is the whole point, right? There's something, somebody else said something about it's not the $1,000,000 that's the reward. That's not the thing that you're really trying to go for. It's everything that you went through to get to that $1,000,000, to get to that point. Who is the person that you become from figuring out how to make that $1,000,000?
Yeah.
And you could lose it the next day. And because of everything that you went through to get to that $1,000,000, you'll be able to get it again. That's how people lose money and businesses and everything. And they start all over again right away. They're able to do all of it again because they learned the things that they had to learn to get to that point. And nobody can take that away, right?
No.
Nobody can take that away.
I love that pressure analogy because as a child, right, there's pressures that you can't control. So you build up these protections like in your body. Like I feel anxiety right now in my like chest right now, just talking about these types of things. Cause it's like, oh, I'm talking about things I'm like, from childhood. Right. And if you actually attune with your body and how you feel when you feel an emotion, like your body is telling you what the hell's up.
Right.
And that's a whole different conversation. But the pressures you talk about, you're at us as adults. We have control over everything in our life, whether we feel like it or not. There are some things that, I have student loan debt. Well, I shouldn't have went to school, right? I had control over that. I was an adult when I chose that. And like, there's certain things, right? That we want to pass off to someone else or, pretend that it's not real. But the pressure you're talking about, that's the chosen pressures to build that diamond. That's what's really important, is choosing those pressures. Just like they make synthetic diamonds now, right? They choose how it happens. The pressure, the certain temperatures, like it's an equation, and it's a formula that you have to create. You've got to create the criteria in order to get where you want to be. And if you're not looking at your goals, and if you're not looking at how you spend your time and how you work your mind in mindset, and that's a huge one. We didn't really that's really where it's at, in my opinion, is just knowing that we're capable of so much more, and yet we have a hard time pushing through because it's scary. It's something we're done. But yeah, I love that.
Yes. Okay, so this lines up perfectly with this video I saw on Instagram when I wasn't scrolling through Instagram.
No doom scroll happening here.
For a few minutes, but it's perfect. I actually wrote it down. I was like, I'm saving this. This is beautiful. Jensen Huang. I think I'm hoping I pronounced his name right. So he was talking about the three things. And one of the things he said was that you need to choose something that's hard to do. You need to suffer for it. It's the ones who can suffer the longest that will win success.
Yes.
And it's a natural filter as well, because you're not going to have as much competition, because people are not going to be as willing to suffer as much for the goal that they're going for. And so you're going to have less competition and you're going to win big. And the second thing he said was that you pick something that you're destined to do, either through the qualities or the expertise, right? There's something that your experience, the things that, so everything we've talked about, right? The suffering for it, the big goals, right? And Then the third thing he says, you better really love working on it so much, because then the pain and the suffering is worth it.
Yep.
Right. So all of the things over the last year, right? Yeah. Sometimes you start out and you don't necessarily know where you're really heading. You got to figure some things out. And as you're going through that journey, you learn, okay, that's not going to work for these reasons, and this isn't going to work for these reasons. Okay, this is the path. I've got the person, I know what I'm good at, and this is what I'm heading towards then. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be super hard. But the thing is that the win is going to be huge.
Right.
And when you're playing to your strengths and your expertise and your experience, you've got the right people in the right seats, you have the right partners, you've found the who, right? Then that all adds to the success, right? You're more likely to succeed. And it's not going to be easy. Nobody's saying it's going to be easy. And that's why you've got to know your why, your reasons. Why are you doing this? Why did you pick this path to go? And so I'm glad I scrolled through that and hit that, because the way he said it so much better than I did. But just so spot on with this conversation. I had to share that. So
it's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I just wanted to know, like you said, the who.
Yeah.
But you need to know who you need, and that's even more important. That could be a whole different conversation.
You could have the wrong who.
I've had multiple wrong who's. They're not the wrong people in general, but they're wrong for me.
Right. Exactly. Right. Well, and I think that could probably go with the fact that you probably were focusing on the thing that wasn't going to fit you anyway. Right. So it seemed like at the time that was the right person for you, but that wasn't the right goal. Right. So then that shifts. And so it's part of the journey, right? This is part of the journey. So I totally relate. I'm not where I wanted to be at this point, but I am definitely further ahead than I was this time last year.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, yeah, the realist in me is like, yeah, I'm not where I wanted to be, but I'm not going to beat myself up on that. I'm going to give myself grace and say, okay, but look at how far I've come, how much I've learned, the progress that I made, the connections that I've made, right? The things that I have accomplished. And I think that gives you then the fuel to continue forward, right? Because it's not like we're just stuck in one place. And I think that's part of the human condition as well, right? Some people may be just fine with being exactly where they're at. They're content with that. But for many of us, we can't be content with where we're at. There's more, and we know there's more, and we can't just sit here and not do anything about it.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. We may not know what to do, but we know we got to do something.
Right. And we're going to fail until we get there.
Exactly. As long as we're going forward, we're good.
Yeah. You're spot on. That's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful. I thank you so much for sharing your journey and kind of going through all these little trails. I really appreciate it. And I know people are going to get a lot out of this.
Thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate you bringing me on, and just love being able to give back and just share that things aren't perfect, and that, everyone who's watching this, like it's valuable to know that your story is important. I don't, half the time I'm not sure what I'm doing, in a sense that, like, if it's worth someone else listening to, but there's people who are listening to this right now who resonate with you, and they're here for you. They're here to listen to what I have to say, and it's just what you have to say is more important than you actually think. And as long as it's from here, not from just here, right? It's got to come from down here.
Absolutely. Yes. That's something that I really remembered, I think from Tony Robbins or Dean Graziosi, where they said, you're not talking to the experts. when you're sharing your story. You're talking to the people that were just like you, that are just starting out, or maybe a month behind you or 2 months behind you, right? So that really helped
Like
me.
that. It's great.
Yes. Yes.
It's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.